confidence in Theresa May's government. MPs are expected to reject the Prime Minister's withdrawal agreement next week. She insists that would be a breach of trust in democracy. Shadow Business Secretary Rebecca Long-Bailey won't say if it'll be triggered after Tuesday's crucial Brexit vote.
Ultimately, the decision rests with Jeremy, and it's up to him to determine when we do put forward that vote of no confidence, but it's certainly a case of when, not if.
The number of people killed in a powerful explosion in Paris yesterday has risen to 4. It's after a woman's body was found by rescue workers in the rubble of a building, partially destroyed by a gas leak at a bakery yesterday. Back home, an anti-racist gathering is taking place in Rooskey in County Leitrim today. It got underway at 12:30 at the scene of a suspicious fire at the Shannon Key West Hotel. The hotel itself was to be used as a direct provision centre for asylum seekers. Leah Doherty is one of the organisers from the Leitrim and Roscommon United Against Racism group.
We wanted people from both counties to be given the opportunity today to come out and show their solidarity with people who are in direct provision.
Finally, 3 Ireland has announced 30 new jobs for its customer service centre in Limerick. The mobile telecommunications company say the new roles will bring the total headcount at its Limerick operation to 500 people. That's it for now. More in an hour.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to Des Kelly Interiors. January sale event now on in all departments.
Windy and mostly cloudy today with outbreaks of both rain and drizzle in the north and northwest. However, there'll be brighter conditions with a few sunny spells by mid-afternoon. Top temperatures of between 9 and 12 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Yeah, you're very welcome along. So 2 live Premier League games on the show for you this afternoon. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer faces his toughest test thus far as Manchester United manager. Spurs and Wembley await. We'll be bringing you that game with Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr. 4:30 kickoff. At 2:15 we have Everton against Bournemouth at Goodison. Kevin Kilban alongside Stephen Doyle. You can text us 53106. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. And we will start by reviewing the Sunday papers. We have Bernard Jackman here in studio. Bernard, thanks a million for popping in.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it. And Brendan O'Brien from the Irish Examiner here as well. Good to have you with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
So the front pages in the Sunday papers, we'll get straight into it today because we have a kick-off at Goodison on the way. So the Sunday Times then, just perfect victories for Leinster, Ulster and Connacht make it 4 wins from 4 for the Irish in Europe. And there's a picture of Adam Byrne scoring Leinster's bonus point try yesterday against Toulouse. And then down here at the bottom, goal hero Rice is the complete manager. That's the complete player. That's according to his manager, Manuel Pellegrini. Scored yesterday at 19 years of age in West Ham's win over Arsenal. Sunday Independent. Again, it's the rugby from yesterday which dominates, and it's a picture of Adam Byrne again jumping for joy. Leinster close in on home quarter-final. Province's eye last 8 berths, but injury toll mounts, is Brendan Fanning here. Luke McGrath went down injured for Leinster yesterday, and it looks serious, to be honest. The Mail on Sunday then, Cubs go wild. Again, it's Leinster, and I guess it's a sign that we're all getting old, but these guys are starting to look very young. It's Jordan Larmour, who I would say looks about 11 years old there, jumping up on Adam Byrne. Youthful Leinster put on a show, but injuries meant for Schmidt as Six Nations looms. Then the Star. Their main story is Mo Salah, Brighton 0, Liverpool 1. Mo Salah with the penalty. A picture of Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen thanks Mo Salah for winning goal. Mo's a bright spark. Klopp satisfied as Salah pinches win. One of those cliched wins you have to get if you're going to win the league. Sunday Mirror then, we have Mo Salah again, Brighton 0, Liverpool 1. Sitting gritty, Klopp hails Stars for digging out what he calls a mature victory. And Frankie for Eric, De Jong to fill Christian void. It seems Spurs are chasing down the brilliant young Ajax midfielder Frankie De Jong to replace Christian Eriksen, who they reckon is going to Real Madrid for €100 million. And then the Sunday World, you'll see here John Aldridge at the top, the kind of win that makes champs, talking about Liverpool's win, and Rice won son. So it's Declan Rice, everybody's very impressed with. Dec marks birthday in real style, and up here a picture of Gary Ringrose, who got man of the match yesterday. Leinster run rings around Toulouse. And then finally, Sun Sport. It's the rugby at the top. Baby Blues, Steel Show, the Leinster 29, Toulouse 13. And this isn't a job interview. Solskjaer saying the Poch battle won't decide my future. Spurs against Manchester United live here and Off the Ball at 4:30. So, gents, you're very welcome. Bernard, thanks a million for coming in. I guess a few weeks on from leaving the Dragons, are you sitting around the house and reliving it all, or how do you
I've dealt
digest
with that. I think obviously Christmas was a good period. Spend time with the family and just reviewing the last year and a half. Obviously, I spoke to you at the start of that. And we spoke about a 3-year plan trying to turn the Dragons around.
And even then, you were very aware this was going to be tough.
Yeah, you don't take on the team at the bottom and without vast resources and think it's going to be easy. No job is easy in pro sport, but I threw my best effort at it, and I don't really have any regrets. I think it was a case of whoever the first man in was always going to find it hard, and hopefully now the WRU and the board will continue to invest in the region, and they can be successful because the players and fans deserve it. In
truth, does anger simmer away when you get relieved of your duties?
No, I don't think. I think if you carry that, you're not going to learn as much from it, and you're going to be affected by it. I think. You got to analyse what could you have done better, and understand that those jobs are difficult, and some people will get success and some others won't, and it's about being able to meet those players in a couple of years' time and for them to recognise that you did the best for them. I think I'm very comfortable that they do feel that.
And so what are your ambitions now? Is it to get right back on the horse straight away, or take some time?
I'm taking some time. I think unfortunately in this job you need someone else to do the job to have an opportunity, and I'm very aware of that and I'm very conscious of that. So listen, I think if you look at it's World Cup year, so a lot of coaching cycles will finish post World Cup.
Yeah.
It's just a case of being patient, staying current, upskilling myself, making sure that I'm in a better position than I was yesterday to get a job if it comes up.
Yeah.
And that I can definitely add to an organisation.
It takes huge mental strength, and in rugby, where there are fewer teams than, say, the world of football, it's more difficult again to get back on the horse. Somebody like Stuart Lancaster must jump out as a huge inspiration for all coaches now going through a tough time.
Yeah, 100%. And there's very few coaches who don't have a blip at some stage on their record. Joe Smith's probably the guy. I'm trying to think where's he had a failure and he hasn't. I don't think but
he's very good. You see, Joe Schmidt, Bernard.
No, he's incredibly good. But most coaches, Eddie Jones was released from the Queensland Reds, having lost by 70 points to the Bulls, had to go to Japan to restart his career. Warren Gatland was released by Ireland. Richard Cockrell was sacked by Leicester. Now he's part of an Edinburgh team who are flying high. So there's definitely very few. Leo Cullen lost his first season. I think he lost 6 from 6 in Europe. And look where he is now. So it's about having that mental strength and resilience and self-belief to bounce back. But it's exciting.
Yeah. Anyone? Did you talk to anyone in the managerial world?
No, I spoke to Warren.
Did you?
Yeah, Warren, because he was obviously a key part of me going there. And, listen, he's always been a really good mentor to me, and I would speak to lots of people. I think I stayed out of team organisations over the last 6-7 weeks, but I think definitely now I'm going to get back in my car and on airplanes and go visit some clubs and continue to learn. Good.
Well, listen, we'll talk about that in more depth at another stage. You're here to review the papers today. The rugby, as the front pages show, dominate, and it was an extraordinarily good weekend for the Irish provinces again. I'm just, before we get into all the papers, I'm trying to keep this nagging suspicion and doubt at bay at the back of my head, which wonders how much the English and French clubs really care about this competition. When the going gets tough, I think they're bailing out at the first sign of trouble, and we're hanging our hat on it.
We were talking about this earlier, weren't we, Bernard? I mean, it's like the counter view is coming in already. We're not even through the weekend. Before it was perfectly poised for a huge weekend for the Irish provinces, but Gloucester were crap. Toulouse disappointed, Racing, well, they're through anyway, and it's very easy to swing that way. Whereas, that's hindsight and it's 2020, it's really easy. But I mean, this is still fantastic achievement. I mean, you look at Toulouse, what were we saying all last week, Bernard? If there's any French club that loves European competition, it's Toulouse. You look at Racing 92, Jackie Lorenzetti, that guy is just absolutely ravenous for a European title. So, it's very easy to flip and flop from one to the other, and I think maybe a little bit early before the round is even finished that we're kind of saying, well, it wasn't that good, really.
You're 100% right about Toulouse. I met the Toulouse stadium manager. He was over on Friday, and through mutual contact he wanted to visit Aviva, and they brought over 40 of their biggest sponsors to Dublin. They're staying to Westbury. They were set for a massive scalp in Europe.
Okay.
And the players. I met some of the players as well, and William Servat, the coach, who's obviously won 4 European Cup medals with Toulouse, and Joe Molloy, who's part of that as well. They came here to do a job. It wasn't a disinterested French team. They just didn't have the quality on the day to do the job.
Servat said we're schooled, basically. His English wasn't great, but that's the point he was making.
Yeah, and in fairness, I think Wayne Barnes has said that Leinster are the well-drilled team in...
Stuart
Barnes, sorry, Stuart Barnes. It would be good if Wayne Barnes was saying, it would be helpful. But yeah, they're the most well-drilled team in Europe. And I actually, looking at Munster on Friday night, I don't think they're far behind. I think we've 2 teams who are real contenders to win this.
That's Stuart Barnes' real point, actually. So it's page 8 and 9 in the Sunday Times. I thought it was one of the more interesting pieces on the rugby, I must say, as well. And he talked about Leinster and how they handle the conditions, because I presume Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster were planning for this a long way out, but then you wake up and there's a gale force breeze, so you have to really rethink things, and they did that. And he talked about the carrying in the first half in particular when Leinster were against the wind. He said there was nothing random in who carries where and when. Watching the first half, I note the same name, Cian Healy. So often the first carrier off the scrum. The outstanding loose head isn't quite as quick as Sean Cronin, his hooker, but he's a bit more sharper out of the blocks than his mate on the other side of the scrum, Tadhg Furlong. Healy was the name in the notebook. The next one was Furlong, time after time. He says, these are not just big lads thinking, I'll have a charge. No, they are part of the best organised team Europe has ever seen. Phases of 20-plus carriers are now the norm. The number of occasions in which the 2 props carried in the first half was impressive, but what was astonishing was the orchestrated manner in which they operated.
Yeah, there's no doubt that's true, and it's true Irish rugby at the moment. I mean, everyone speaks about the Irish team's quality at the breakdown, and obviously technically we were very, very good there, but it's the organisation to get there. Like, our ball carriers very rarely let go to the defensive line on his own. It's very clear who's responsible for that clear out. We don't over-resource that ruck, so we don't end up with having 5 guys in attacking ruck, because that will make it easier for the opposition for the next phase. So, to go 36 phases, which they did, and they actually didn't score off it, actually.
Toulouse did very well then.
Yeah, but you certainly felt, and Leinster, I think, would have felt that was actually just sowing the seed for the last 20 minutes, when, having to defend for 36 phases would leave a mark.
Well, because I was on the touchline, and Matt Williams was part of the Virgin Media coverage, and I said, that's not great that they didn't get over after 36 phases. And he said, look how much time it's eaten up. They're just playing this whole game beautifully.
It made an abundance of sense to me. I mean, with all the talk about the 10 internationals that were missing, when you look at that pack and that front 5 as well, I mean, Stuart Barnes talks about the structure of who is carrying where and when. I mean, that's pretty much their first choice front row. So it makes sense to me. Well, the guys out back aren't maybe as familiar with each other. And you can see, I thought the structure of their play after a while, that out back the ideas became a little bit kind of ragged, whereas up front they knew precisely what they were doing the whole time. So it makes sense to do something
like that. Is that level of structure difficult to impose on a team as a coach?
Yeah, it is. I think you need real clarity in your message, and you need players who are actually willing and able to take on information and understand it. And I think that seeps all the way down from Joe Schmidt back down to the provinces, because they speak about on a Monday in the Irish camp a walkthrough where you've been sent the information in terms of your role in particular patterns, and to be a metre to the left or a metre to the right off has serious consequences in terms of your opportunity to play. Yeah. So guys it's like knowing your playbook in NFL for a quarterback. You need to know your role in a sequence of structured plays and patterns, and then you need to implement it. And I think that Irish rugby, and for instance in our school system as well, so the French call it the Anglo-Saxon way, where everything is structured and everyone has a role, and they actually criticise it a lot, right? But then when William Servat comes up against it yesterday, as a coach, he realises how effective it is. And I think if you look at Leinster, if you look at their defeat in Toulouse earlier on in the year, they were actually quite loose. So they went for that 50-50 pass, or they offload, and that's where Toulouse spring into action. And
that's playing Toulouse at their own game.
Exactly.
And where does it tend to break down for you? So you've got your game plan and you've got the structure and you know where everybody should be and you feel you're communicating this well to players, and somewhere in that maelstrom it breaks down under the pressure of a game. Are there just only so many intelligent players in the world? Is it your communication skills? What do you feel is the big area that you try and improve?
Yeah, I think it has to be something that you can't go into. If you went into France, and foreign coaches have tried this, and even dumbed it down a little bit, it's still not what they've known from under 12s, under 13s. Whereas probably here, because historically we were more limited in terms of athleticism than other teams, South Africans, etc., or even at schools level, sometimes we've had maybe coaches who haven't a background in rugby, so they upskill themselves and learn the system rather than it's a laissez-faire attitude to go out and play. So as the Irish rugby players in general are very, very good on detail and want detail and crave detail. And then you get a good level of athletes, you get a good work ethic, you get good team spirit and a good plan. It all comes together pretty well.
Yeah.
Sounds simple.
It does, yeah, easy. Barnes talks about Munster and Leinster generally as well. He talked about Ross Byrne's lovely weighted cross kick for Dave Kearney's try. Hinted at anything but off-the-cuff rugby. It was straight out of the Sexton textbook. Maybe it was even in the Ireland textbook. And he talks about how impressed he was with Munster as well. He says, Eddie Jones before has talked about Sexton's body and, his injury situation. And on the Carberry point, Barnes says, Eddie Jones need not waste his words, warning the Irish fly half of the physical threats coming his way. Ireland have a high-class replacement now, not a void. Ireland also have two sides who will be hard to crack in Europe. The rest of Europe must be green with envy. And if you were to sum up the Neil Francis piece, he's more to come from Blues, but the ghost of Thomond Park now well and truly banished is the headline. The point he makes is, you couldn't say it was a perfect performance or that they were absolutely clinical, because there were, he says, unpardonable inaccuracies. And he says you can't say it was relentless either, because Toulouse later on did have their purple patch. But he says that in really high quality matches, you get exposed. And he says nobody in blue was exposed. Anybody you had doubts about in the blue ranks performed admirably. And that was the most pleasing thing about yesterday's victory.
I thought, in terms of Leinster performances, I've seen a ton of Leinster in the last 10 years. That's as impressive for me in some ways as anything I've seen. I saw them beat Clermont in a semi-final in France, which is probably the ultimate still to this day. But given the context of the team they were playing, the players they were missing, everything they did, and I was saying to you, Bern, is there another team in Europe that could lose 10 of their top class players and school a team like Toulouse like that?
No, there isn't. There definitely is. I think depth-wise.
Yeah.
And they're guys that aren't household names.
Yeah.
So I saw something yesterday with Lawrence Lalio and Ugo Munya, speaking about the quality of Bath and Was and the salary cap and all these issues and why they don't have the depth. I mean, they have guys who are the similar age profile to the Adam Burns' world.
Yeah.
But when they step into that level, they're not ready. So I don't think it's a money issue. I mean, there's big issues. There's a big debate in England about salary cap, etc. The salary cap is more than high enough to compete on both fronts. But for some reason, there's a gap between their academy players and their development players coming in and being able to step into a team against the quality opposition and perform, whereas the Leinster youngsters, the Munster youngsters at the moment, Ulster youngsters, in fairness, Ulster have had to dig deep, and they're able to go up against Racing Metro yesterday and get a famous win. Irish rugby's in a really strong place. It's probably the first time ever 4 provinces are going to qualify for Europe.
Yeah,
first time ever.
It will be the first time ever. Yeah. So on Ulster, if you go to page 81 of the Mail, Stock on the rise. Jacob Stockdale. That's 6 tries in his 5 European games now. It is 6 and 5, so he's the top try scorer in the competition. James Murray reporting here, 26-22 the final score. The Ireland winger scored tries in either half. His second a memorable solo effort. He scored in every European round so far. There's a thing about Stockdale. So take his recent tries. I'm thinking of the Scarlets away game where he had a great run down the wing, and even the solo effort last night against Clermont where he beats a really good player on the outside who gets hands on him and then kicks. And as happens in Jacob Stockdale's life, the ball bounces the right way. That's the other thing. That has to stop soon, or else he's able to predict how a ball's going to bounce in some innate way that we don't realise. But there have been a number of occasions, like the Scarlets game, like last night against Racing, where taken in isolation, you would say, well, the defender should have stopped him. He had hands on him. So that's just poor defending. But it's now happening too many times. So there's something he's doing when defenders get hands on him that makes him not as easy to stop as we think he might be.
He's a very strong fend, handoff, and he has that ability. For a big, strong, quick, athletic guy, he actually has very good footwork. So as the tackler lunges, he's able to just shift slightly away again. Whereas most players are committed to that running line and they're not able to have a late change direction. So it's not a flamboyant sidestep like we saw from the last try for Toulouse yesterday, Chesley Coburn, but he has very subtle footwork that just gets him that millimetre he needs to break those tackles.
Right.
And he did twice yesterday for the first try as well, Antoine Classon's. you know, for all manner, he should be in touch.
Yeah.
But it's harder to work out how he missed the tackle than made it. But
Stockdale seems to be a common denominator though. In those missed tackles.
And very few guys can do that. And I think now he's up there. If there's a British and Irish Lions tour this summer, you would say he's probably nailed on to be the starting winger, which is incredible.
His little kick over the top and running after it and somehow scoring is becoming a trademark very quickly. You know, Twickenham and New Zealand, and you see it again last night.
It's interesting as well. I mean, in any sport, a guy who can finish, can put the ball in the net in a soccer context is just gold dust. And you look at again yesterday, Jordan Larmour, who we all know is an amazing player, but yet one criticism of him is maybe he's too lateral with the sidestep. There was one point yesterday where a beautiful little Cheslin Colby-like jink, and then little gap opened and he jinked again. You're thinking just go through it, and Stockdale maybe is a lesson there in, you know, a more direct form of getting to the line. I mean, his try record is phenomenal.
It's ridiculous. I presume like you can't put too much pressure on him. That just can't happen across the next 10 years. He'll have to slow down at some stage. But I was just going to ask with the dinks over the top, like the Twickenham one where he knees it, you know, and judges the bounce again, like he did last night. He judged the bounce better than 3 players. Are some players gifted with this innate ability to predict what way a rugby ball is going to bounce?
Listen, I think he is getting very favourable bounces. So obviously there's a practice.
No, that's all I need to know. That's fine.
No, but having said that, if you look at the key difference in those tries is he's been able to get past the defenders.
Yeah.
So when that ball bounces, he's in front of them. So pace is a key factor. And in fairness, that second try yesterday was a pre-planned move, very similar to the one that he scored against Ireland. The Ireland one was New Zealand was a line out. That was a scrum, but it isolated their right winger, and it gave him a foot race to the line.
Grant, but in short, when he dinks that ball over the top and it's in the air, we are not saying that he has an innate ability to know which way the ball is bounced.
There's also the fact the defender has to turn, I presume, as well.
His agent would tell you he can, but
you haven't seen him anyway.
Listen, he obviously has good footwork, good footballing ability to make it bounce favourably, but he wouldn't be able to control it as well as he does. His pace is a huge factor.
Okay, but he's just in this run where literally the ball is bouncing his way. Yes. That's kind of what's happening. Just before we leave the rugby, there's a piece you have it open, Brendan, in front of you. English civil war threatens as clubs chase the money. And this is like this story in English rugby is going on as long as English rugby is going on. The clubs and the RFU want control over things, and this is the latest stand from the English clubs.
Yeah, and it's a piece by Rory Keane. Rory has just recently returned to Ireland, and he was working as a rugby journalist in the UK, so there's a couple of little anecdotes in here that he would have picked up from his buddies in the media in England, which gives an extra little insight. What I like about it as well, a lot of times if you're writing this for an Irish audience, you'll try and shoehorn the Irish angle into it. It's very unapologetically, this is an English story, we're just telling it, and it's a very good synopsis on it. And we talk about layout in papers as well sometimes as well, and what caught my eye was the picture down at the bottom of Mark McCafferty with Theresa May in the inset, and if you're in that kind of company, that's not a very good start for you straight away. And Rory puts it into the context of Brexit as well, when a few years ago the English and the French clubs basically caused the downturn of the Heineken Cup and the power play, and that's what this all is.
I don't think, by the way, the competition has fully recovered from that.
No, it hasn't, unquestionably. It hasn't got that lustre.
Yeah.
No.
The Heineken Cup was such a great brand, and it was only getting bigger. Yeah. And you ask people in the street now, what's the name of the European competition? Yeah. Champions Heineken Cup, Champions Cup,
Yeah. And it's a very good summation of everything that's happening and has happened, and just a state of flux that is in the English game at the moment.
Well, I think as well, I mean, this is a league that are basically trying to dictate to the
RFU,
Celtic nations, RFU, European rugby. And Mark McCafferty, obviously they've been able to convince a hedge fund to invest 230 million for 27%. But when it all broke, they invited the members of the media to come to the Premiership headquarters, a 45-minute briefing, but all the signage and background was still Aviva, even though Gallagher had taken over. So, they don't seem to be completely in sync and ready to go and dominate the world rugby if they haven't got their own house in order. And if you can't form a strong relationship with your own governing body, which is the RFU, who also give them 200 million, it's not a great sign that you're ready to go and fix World Rugby's problems.
That's true, yeah. The RFU have given them 200 million. Basically, they want to break away and set up their own league. They want to be free of the RFU. They want to have total control over their players. I presume they don't want relegation either, and I presume they don't want much of a salary cap.
Well, the whole relegation thing is obviously the big question at the moment. Will they scrap it at the end of this season, or as Rory has here, the indication is maybe that it'll semi-compromise will extend that to next year, that they'll get London Irish up. And Do you know, just as a pure sporting, observer, how horrible is that? It's just so nakedly commercial and business-like. Well, hold on, we need to get our buddy into this club first, and then we'll lock the doors. Just the figure you mentioned, Bernard, 230 million for 27%. I'm never good at maths, but that would value the Gallagher Premiership at close to £1 billion, which to me is a staggering figure. Absolutely staggering. I mean, this is a business that is not making money. Exeter Chiefs are the only team to make any money last year. They weren't in the red. We're talking staggering figures here, so when you look at it like that, you can understand exactly where all this power play is coming from.
Yeah, the floor could fall out of English rugby very easily. Saracens, he mentions 40 million in debt. It seems, though, the other point that Rory makes is this whole extraction from the RFU is proving very difficult, because in 2016 they signed the professional game agreement, which allowed Eddie Jones lots of access to the players, and the Premiership clubs got 200 million in return. That's legally binding. You can't just say we've decided not, we're ignoring that. So it's proving tricky. That is the rugby in the papers. We're going to take a short break. We're keeping things moving today because we've got kick-off at Goodison Park at 2:15. There's a piece in the back page of the Sunday Independent which, if you're Niall Quinn reading, will probably have you wincing. So we're going to talk about that in just 1 second.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. News Talk Breakfast.
Soda bread, says Ron in Castleknock. You know it's good for you. Have it every day. It tastes so much better than white bread. McCambridge's or Sean's brown bread. Ron, I have to disagree with you, and I am more in line with this list. The other listener, Kieran.
White bread with a good old packet of Tato crisps. Ace.
Yeah, no argument there.
News Talk Breakfast with Shane Coleman and Kieran Cuddihy.
In association with Air.
Back tomorrow from 7 on News Talk.
Hertz means car rental, right? But Hertz also means car sales, with a massive range of nearly new cars from €39 per week. Flexible finance options with zero deposit. Call into our showrooms in Dublin, Cork or Blarney, or online at hertzcarsales.ie. T's and C's apply.
If you're thinking of buying a residential rental property, ICS Mortgages can provide an excellent range of flexible buy-to-let mortgages, including interest-only terms of up to 15 years. We'll also help you to refinance your existing portfolio and grow your property investments. Call 1890 427 427, visit icsmortgages.ie or contact your local mortgage broker. ICS Mortgages, the property investor's choice. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply and are subject to change. The entire amount that you have borrowed will still be outstanding at the end of the interest-only period. Dilosk DAC, trading as Dilosk and ICS Mortgages, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
New year, new laptop. The Curry's PC World sale is now on, with the largest range of home appliances and technology. Get our lowest ever price on the HP 7th Gen Intel Core i5 laptop at just $479. Save up to €400 on Windows laptops, up to 30% on tablets and 10% on selected gaming laptops. Nobody beats our prices fact. So sorry other stores, these are the ones you're gonna have to match. Good luck. Sale ends Tuesday. At Curry's PC World, we help you get it right.
Whatever's on your list, come in and see how much you can save at Lidl. Check out our 3 for €9 mix and match meats like fresh Irish diced beef, smoked haddock fillet and breaded garlic chicken Kiev. And try our big brand super savers like Dolmio sauce, just $1.49, and Kerrygold Irish butter, only $3.25. Lidl, more for you.
With a new car ad every minute on Done Deal, it's easy to choose one that's right for you. Whether you're planning the ultimate road trip or the school pickup, find the perfect car for any adventure on Done Deal. Discover and drive.
If you've had a mortgage for years, or you're a first-time buyer, why pay more for mortgage protection than you have to? VHI now offer cover from as little as €7.58 per month. It's easy to set up or switch over the phone. Call us on 1890 444444 or search VHI Mortgage Protection. €7.58 per month is based on a 30-year-old non-smoker for a 20-year term and mortgage protection of €158,000, including a 10% customer discount and a 1% insurance levy. Terms and conditions apply. VHI Healthcare DAC, trading as VHI Healthcare, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland and is tied to Zurich Life Assurance plc for VHI Mortgage Protection.
Mattresses-delivered.ie. Nationwide delivery within 48 hours for free. That's mattresses-delivered.ie. Lowest prices guaranteed. Don't forget the hyphen. T's and C's apply.
I will never see my wife and daughter again.
Unaccompanied learners can lead to unaccompanied lives. And now the law has changed. Gardaí have the power to seize a vehicle driven by an unaccompanied learner, What's more, the owner of the vehicle faces prosecution and a fine of up to €1,000. Don't drive unaccompanied and never loan a car to an unaccompanied or unlicensed driver. From the Road Safety Authority, visit rsa.ie to see Noel Clancy's story.
Looking for a new car? Well, Nissan's incredible 2-for-1 offer is back. Only with Nissan, you get 2 new cars for the price of 1. Yes, you heard me right. That's 2 new cars for the price of 1. Buy a selected 191 Nissan and we'll replace it the following year for free. But hurry, this is a limited offer. Contact your local Nissan dealer today. Visit nissan.ie for details. Terms and conditions apply. Nissan. Innovation that excites.
The Ryanair seat sale is here. Get up to €30 off return flights on over 1 million seats. Visit Ryanair.com and choose from over 200 amazing destinations. Ryanair. Low fares made simple. Limited availability. See Ryanair.com.
At Sky, we're on a mission to thank our loyal customers. So, we've assembled a crack team of actors, sports pundits and comedians. Okay, guys, ready? 3, 2,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, a bit early, Jamie. I thought we were going on 1.
Who goes on 1?
It's always after 1. Idris, one more time.
You know what, guys? Forget it. We haven't even got to the reward stuff. Amelia, could you just finish off the ad, please?
Love to. Sky VIP, your loyalty programme, rewarding you for your time with us. Sky, believe in better.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Welcome back. Bernard Jackman and Brendan O'Brien from the Irish Examiner with us in studio looking at the Sunday Papers. We do have Spurs against Manchester United later on, 4:30. Commentary is on the way. By the way, just in the rugby, I should have mentioned, it's not all over the papers, but the Simon Zebo tweet you suspect is going to be a big story across the week. He was talking about the game last night in Belfast. A tough place to play, great effort from the boys, 2 important points on the road. And then he said, also, I hope my ears deceive me with some comments directed my way from the crowd. # not on. Django wins in the end. Now, based on the themes in Django Unchained, he's certainly hinting there at racist abuse, and he's hoping his ears deceived him. He probably will be asked to clarify this in a more straightforward way as opposed to hinting at it, and we'll have to see where that goes. But that was my interpretation of that tweet.
Yeah, it remains to be seen how soon or long we can actually get around to that. I mean, he's over in Paris now, he's not exactly readily accessible. You know, it might not be picked up and it might linger for a while. Hopefully not, and like you say, it does come out and it's clarified one way or another.
Yeah, if he makes the allegations, it has to be dealt with. Yeah. But I think letting it just linger in that vacuum there is probably not the best thing. So I mentioned before the ad break there, there's a piece, there's a few pieces on Niall Quinn, who this week, and you were there, Brendan, when he was speaking on Tuesday, he's been talking about some plans, I would say not in huge detail, but in a degree of detail, huge plans for what could be done with the League of Ireland and the academies around the League of Ireland. Paul Rowan's writing about it, fairly straightforward way, just outlining some of what Niall Quinn is saying. Quinn's lofty domestic goal is the headline, and to be fair to Rowan, he does say at some points, you know, more controversial than the other stuff that Quinn's talking about will prove his proposals for tax breaks for multinational companies and corporate social responsibility payments. He says also Quinn's idea that the immigration investor programme be used to lure Brazilian footballers seeking Irish citizenship and with a spare €1 million in their back pockets looks outlandish. Talks about relations as well between the FAI and Quinn, which are somewhat frosty, and speculates as to how the politics of this is all going to play out, this being Quinn coming out publicly to talk about his goals for the league. So that's a small enough piece in the Sunday Times, page 6. On the back page, Eamon Sweeney sharpens his knife and goes to town on the plan. Daft plan, a throwback to Celtic Tiger. Opening line, Niall Quinn is chancing his arm. Talks about how we first heard about this on the Marion Finucane show, which he says is Ireland's premium venue for idle, semi-informed, middle-class chatter. It's a quick swipe there across Marion's show on his way to Quinn's. Statements, which he says are like that, but with corporate waffle. We get the likes of, quote, big corporate social responsibility, or put something better on the table for our industry, and getting a white paper together. He says it's a throwback to the halcyon Celtic Tiger days when any half-baked idea would be greeted as visionary. And he talks about how Apple might chip in, God bless them. Says Quinn's big idea is to replicate the current structure, but with more money, except he doesn't want the FAI to have anything to do with these teams. Essentially, he wants the structure that's there at the moment to be broken up and then replaced by something which is exactly the same, but with different people in charge. people who might, and he says, I'm taking a wild guess here, be Niall Quinn and his buddies from the business world. And on it goes in that vein. He says, if Quinn's ideas are so patently daft, why waste time and space pointing it out? And he says, because for starters, they might cause a lot of trouble if they're taken on board by the politicians he wants to court. Fine Gael always keen to do the corporate sector a favour, and you could just imagine Shane Ross thinking this is just the ticket. He says, Quinn's ideas shouldn't be ignored because he's an interloper. They should be ignored because they're ridiculous. Get up the yard, Niall, is his closing statement.
There's a lot.
They're just some of the choice quotes.
You know, you could come at this from so many angles. Like you said, I was there on Tuesday. He spoke to us for 35 or 36 minutes. He wasn't looking at his watch. This was something that he was very open to sharing with us. Just a couple of things to point out on it. Niall himself said on Tuesday, I'm not the answer here. You know, I'm not coming in here with, this is how we do it, this is how we don't do it. He said something about when he was asked, look, would you like to be, heading this? He said, I'm not trying to deliver anything I'm not capable of delivering. So there's a number of points where he said, look, all I'm interested in doing here is generating a debate. These are my ideas. And if you boil his ideas down, take away the Brazilian thing, which even at the time I was wincing, it was like, don't do that. That's really off the top of the head stuff, and it is ridiculous.
So just on that briefly, Sweeney does say we could lure Brazilians here long enough so they qualify for Ireland under residency rules. This seems a somewhat odd way to promote underage Irish talent. And then he says, suppose we turn up a load of talented Brazilians. Will there be a cap on the number who'll be allowed to play for Ireland? How would we enforce this? By forced deportation if there are too many promising ones?
I think what you need to do with that is take a scissors and cut that completely out.
The Brazilian idea needs to be cut.
That's ridiculous. I mean, everybody agrees with that. You boil down to the nub of this issue. What Niall Quinn is saying is we need to bring an end to decades and decades of Irish kids at 14, 15, 16, 17 getting the boat over the Holyhead and being chewed up by a system that doesn't care for them. And we do that by investing in our coaches and in our facilities. That's what he said. Now, none of that is outlandish. None of that is ridiculous. All the stuff around it, I would have issue with the corporate social responsibility.
Why?
Because I don't believe it's business's job to be doing that, basically. That's another big issue. So I'd share some of the shortcomings or the issues that Eamon Sweeney would have, but I find the tone of it really, really disappointing. Who else is coming up with this stuff? Who else has a grand vision for Irish football?
You find the tone of Sweeney's piece disappointing?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, he's a columnist, he's entitled to his opinion, that's what it's there for, but it's a two-footed lunge at the knee, and there's really what's his alternative? I mean, Eamon is a League of Ireland nut, we know that, his Sligo Rovers days and all that. But where's the alternative? Who else is coming up with any sort of a vision for Irish football? I mean, it's only 2.5, 3 years since Jonathan Gabay did that cringing presentation on the League of Ireland at the Aviva Stadium when he was talking about painting bus stops in League of Ireland colours. So that's what the FAI have brought up with us. That was presented to us at the time. John Delaney said before it came out, I'm really impressed with it, I've seen it, and I think it's going to be a good presentation. What have we heard from the FAI in blue sky thinking since? With nothing. And yet Niall Quinn is a guy who's come in, he's spent 18 months looking at this, talking to people, and he's getting shot at from all angles. He says he doesn't have the answer. But let's not forget, this is a guy who got Drummondville together. Like, if he can do that and bring about a situation where they can buy a Premier League club. Bernard, you made the point. He's been a Premier League chairman. He's seen the business. He's seen Peter Scudamore and what they did with the Premier League. He was the Director of International Development with the Sunderland for a while. He's got contacts all over the world. He's seen how these things have worked in Vietnam and South Africa. He's had contact from the USA. He does not have the answers, but he's asking the questions, and who else is doing that?
Yeah, I don't know whether his plan is viable or not, but I do think it's a good thing that someone's putting their head above water and actually trying to create debate. And if what ends up with is a much more streamlined and fit for purpose plan, well then it's going to move on facilities and development in the country and get more people playing sport and keeping them in Ireland and hopefully helping the national team. So whether it's right or wrong, I think this is a massive cut from Eamon Sweeney, but I don't think that should stop the debate. going on. What are the FAI? Are the FAI going to get him in now and try and streamline and come together? Yeah. But he's too many good contacts, as you say, too much experience, and obviously a passion for it.
Yeah.
Because the easy thing to do is, keep out of the limelight here and not put yourself up for criticism, and do his punditry and his other interests. But he actually seems to actually care. So I think it's definitely a positive in that, he's trying to create debate and discussion around it. And, if there is a few faults in the plan, fair enough, but this is probably just the starting block.
I haven't seen the Quinn white paper, so I don't know how detailed it is or what ideas he has. But Sweeney's point is that essentially he wants the structure that's there at the moment to be broken up and then replaced by something which is exactly the same but with different people in charge. Is that true? Is that your sense of what
Quinn has said? He said to us last Tuesday, this has to have FAI involvement.
Okay.
Whether the league is run independently or not, it has to have FAI involvement. It has to have FAI buy-in, so they would be involved in some way. Maybe that they just wouldn't be as hands-on in running the league at the moment, as they are at the moment. So this isn't some kind of, as is mentioned in a couple of the articles, Fint and Drury coming from the outside and saying, let's just rip everything up and have an All-Ireland league. There's government involvement needed, there's involvement from business, there's involvement from education. I mean, one of his ideas is that kids go into these academies, they get a 3-year contract as a footballer, and those that don't make it, they're given tuition fees for 3 years in university. I mean, should we not embrace that idea? It might not be functional, it might not be possible, but surely that's better than the situation at the moment where you've guys coming back from the UK and they've given up their schooling, they're coming back as supposed failures in their own eyes. Yeah. They're here to have a family network around them, to have an association that in theory should have their best interests at heart, as opposed to some grab all money club in the UK. So like his basic ideas are,
let's not shoot it down so quickly is what you're saying.
Let's look at this. And yeah, some of his ideas are off the wall. That's fine. He's a blue sky thinker, that horrible phrase. He's not saying he has the answers, but why people are cutting him down left, right and centre just for, like you say, Bernard, raising his head above the parapet, I just don't get it.
And he hasn't, in fairness, he hasn't just said, the FAI need to pay for this, or government need to pay for this. Like, unfortunately, sports infrastructure and sports development and increasing participation costs money, and he's just thrown up some ideas about how that revenue could come about. And whether you agree with business tax breaks, etc., unfortunately business won't throw money at it unless there's something for them. But if that can have a far greater effect in terms of keeping our best teenagers in Ireland, improving their chance of getting a good education, well then you have to weigh up someone at some stage has to weigh up the balance, whether that's actually worthwhile. But he's not just throwing the pressure on the FAI to say, look, fund this, because obviously the money's not there.
Yeah. Sweeney says on that point, you could build terrific facilities in underprivileged areas for the price of the tax breaks Niall wants to wangle for his multinational pals. Meanwhile, the state money he wants to fund his scheme would be taken not from rugby, but from smaller sports, because the rugby references the Neil Francis tribe. The state money he wants to fund his scheme would be taken not from rugby but from smaller sports which are underfunded as is. Get up the yard, Niall.
Point on that, there's been tax breaks for contributions to the arts in this country for donkey's years, and there isn't for sport, and that's something that Federation of Sport in Ireland was Federation of Irish Sport, was lobbying the government, various governments, for a long time. I mean, so this is something that happens, and sport isn't getting a piece of that pie, so why shouldn't it? I mean, with the thing about underprivileged areas, obviously that's a fair point. You can always say there should be money spent elsewhere. Why would you put any money into sport when the health system is like it is? Why would you give anything to foreign aid when we have homeless people in this country? Helping one should not mean you don't help another. That's a false argument to make, in my opinion.
Okay, right. So that's there. That will make pleasant reading in the Quinn household this morning, I wouldn't think. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Yeah. And the FAI, John Delaney's up before the Dáil committee next month, I think it is.
Yeah, I think that's what Paul said.
I think there is a sense, though, that something really has to be sorted out in Irish football. We really have reached a point where it's gone on for too long. And Quinn did make the point during the week, and I do agree with him, that this idea that a 15-year-old goes to England now is just pie in the sky stuff. The economies are too strong. They're global empires. You're just not going to make it anymore. Yeah. Like, you're talking one in, whatever the odds were 20 years ago and 10 years ago, they've almost hit infinity now.
Ties into the piece by on Enda Stevens, the Sheffield United player, in the Sunday World. I think it was Kevin Palmer wrote it. And he's just basically saying that, I mean, we need to recalibrate what our expectations are for an Irish team. And he talks about Iceland. They don't have guys at the top of the Premier League, but look at what they're doing. And he made the point about all the players, the Irish players, currently doing very well in the Championship. David McGoldrick amongst them. 10 goals for Sheffield United now this season. A guy who's played for Ireland before, who you'd imagine Mick McCarthy will bring back in. So we need to kind of really recalibrate what it is we're doing. And just because we've done things for a certain way for so long doesn't mean you keep on doing it. Do you know what I mean? And people like this will always get, an arched eyebrow. I was actually listening to the Freakonomics podcast during the week, and this guy Andrew Yang, who's going for the presidency in the USA, and he's talking about universal social credit. He's talking about people getting a dividend from the Googles and the Facebooks all across the world. And I mean, that guy is just being shot left, right and centre. But he's saying, well, just because this has happened since the Industrial Revolution doesn't mean it happens still. And it's the same in this. Let's change it up. It's not working, so why would you continue with it?
Yeah, fair point. I'm seeing a few people, well, one person in particular tweeting, I'm trying to find it, I'm wary of getting into this stuff on air, live on air as we talk about it, but someone is saying that Zebo nicknamed himself Django a couple of years ago after the film came out, so Django wins is just, okay. So I think probably just clarifying it is the easiest thing, and we can leave the speculation until a later date. So you guys tell me where you want to go then. There's pieces on Padraig Harrington, Ryder Cup captain, Rory McIlroy, I think, Brendan, you mentioned, Andy Murray, there's the Cork plan, you liked a piece on Willie Mullins, and there's Rosemary Smith at the end. We're probably not going to fit it all in. So out of those, Bernard, where do you want to go?
Cork plan.
Cork plan,
yeah.
Okay.
No, well, I suppose it's kind of a little bit like,
Is Mick Foley in the Sunday Times?
Or but Niall Quinn coming out with a, big idea. But I'm just interested to I suppose discuss or read and see is this what's needed for the Cork footballers to come up with a 5-year plan to obviously re-establish Cork football as a force. It involves some investment, full-time head of performance. I think there's a full-time head of S&C. But is this what counties need to do now to catch up or to stay attached to what seems to be the juggernaut of Dublin? And if it is, obviously then you got to look at the resources of each county, and obviously Cork, being the size it is and the tradition it has down there across hurling and football, probably have the resources to do that. But where does that leave the smaller counties?
It's true. Mick Foley writes in the Sunday Times that Dublin's plan in 2011 was for world domination, where he says this Cork document is more a state of emergency. Which I suppose it is when we've seen how Cork football in particular has declined. And he wonders as well, is it part of the post-Frank Murphy legacy? Is there a new generation of county board officials liberated by the breaking up of an old power cartel to address 20th century problems in a 21st century way? Or he says, maybe is it just that Cork's decline has been so stark, like a 16-point defeat in the Munster final? It's probably, to some extent, a bit of both. Yeah.
But I like it. I like the fact there's a plan and there's ambition, and there seems to be consensus from the county board to put the people in place to deliver it. Rather than just speaking about, we're going to be fine. Yeah.
They talk about wanting to get Corkness back.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. How would you define that?
I think the definition here is quite good. It depends where you're from. If you're from Cork, it's that air of confidence that veers on the correct side of arrogance, and anywhere else it's bloody Corkness. They're the most arrogant bunch in the country. So it really is a matter of perspective. But there was I think Larry Ryan in her own paper in the Examiner yesterday had a very good piece on what is Corkness, and Larry's got a very wry eye for this kind of stuff, which I'd recommend to people. But there is something, I mean, it's undeniable about Cork as a county. There is that air of confidence and self-belief there that has never been there in football circles. And I think Mick actually talks about, during last week's press conference, he mentions Tom Lyons, chairman of the Carbery Divisional Board and long-standing columnist for the Southern Star newspaper, who reached back into 60 years' experience when he was talking about this. And he said, Cork football has never really been up, he said. There's been more down than up. We should not take it that we're trying to get back to something we had, and that our present problems are present problems. They're problems of 130 years of taking football as a second game in the county. So that's always been the case. It's always been, the poor relation beside hurling. I remember actually going to see the All-Ireland Under-21 final back in the noughties when they played Laois, my own county, and the final was on in Thurles. And as you can imagine, any All-Ireland final for Laois, the place was mobbed in blue and white, and 20, 30 Cork fans at it. you know, an All-Ireland final, and that I remember my dad was with me and it really struck with him. It wasn't a surprise to me, but a lot of people from Laois remarked on it. It was like, what's going on? And you could go up to Cork football games around the country. I've seen them play in Ulster and places like that, and there's always, you know, a trickle of people, a handful of people. So it's always been second best. So this is something that is long overdue. I mean, in any situation or any crisis, the first step is recognising there's a crisis, you know?
Yeah.
And they're finally facing up to it.
There's it's a very helpful graphic, 42 pages. I haven't had time to read the report myself. So just the 5 points, if you're wondering what Cork are hoping to do, a high performance manager and talent identification manager for both sports. There's going to be a new football structure in the county championship within 3 years. There'll be more high quality coaches. Plans to repair the disconnect between the senior team and supporters, including training days and at club grounds and some social media competitions, and then settle plans for a shared training base for all Cork teams within 2 years. All of that seems very achievable, I would think.
And overdue.
Not too lofty. Yeah, worryingly basic, I would say, actually. So we'll take a short break. We're going to come back. There's pieces on Padraig Harrington, Andy Murray, Willie Mullins and Rosemary Smith.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. Join the conversation. Text us on 53106. Texts cost 30 cents.
Did you get the milk?
I did. Meet Daisy.
Why pay for more than you need? Staying with your current health insurer without reviewing your existing plan could be costing you money. So before you renew your health insurance, compare plans and prices at hia.ie and see what you could save on the cover that matters to you. Find straightforward, independent information at hia.ie. We're here to make things clear. From the Health Insurance Authority.
At Carphone Warehouse, sticking to that resolution to save more is easy with the best deals across every network. Save up to €150 compared to the network stores and get the iPhone 6S for free or the Huawei P20 for only €49. Both on a €30 a month plan with all-you-can-eat data when you switch to 3, but only when you switch at Carphone Warehouse. Don't overpay. Switch today. Any network, any phone, any plan. Only Carphone Warehouse. T's and C's apply. Offer subject to 24-month contract.
You don't have to be a genius to find the best deals in tiles, bathrooms and wood. Just get to TileStyle for up to 50% off tiles, 25% off bathrooms and stone, plus massive reductions on wood flooring. TileStyle, Ballymount Retail Centre, Ireland's leading tile, bathroom and wood flooring showroom. See tilestyle.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
A business needs to be creative to stay ahead of the game. And creative brains need space to think. Give them space. Think better. But let's do it with a little style. Castleknock means business. Discover more at castleknockhotel.com.
If you could hear pain,
It might sound like this.
or this, and it can make you feel like this. You can't hear pain, but you can hear the sound of pain relief. Panadol Extra is up to 30% more powerful than standard paracetamol, so it can treat tough pain, which means you can get back to being you.
Panadol. When pain is gone, life takes its place. Panadol Extra 500mg, 65mg soluble effervescent tablets. Contains paracetamol. Always read the label.
There's a 0% chance of you winning the lotto without a ticket. And the odds on a summer without rain? Also 0. There's a 0% chance you're going to be discovered as a pop star singing in the shower. 0 hope gone off milk won't smell as bad the second time. There's a 0% chance of your keys being just where you left them.
Where are my keys?
And at Skoda, guess what great value starts at? Skoda. Simply clever. Terms and conditions apply. See skoda.ie.
I will never see my wife and daughter again.
Unaccompanied learners can lead to unaccompanied lives. And now the law has changed. Gardaí have the power to seize a vehicle driven by an unaccompanied learner. What's more, the owner of the vehicle faces prosecution and a fine of up to €1,000. Don't drive unaccompanied and never loan a car to an unaccompanied or unlicensed driver. From the Road Safety Authority, visit rsa.ie to see Noel Clancy's story.
Ciara's a big fan of the radiator in biology class, especially when she's frozen half to death after cycling to school. Because at Energia we power thousands of classrooms, we're the power behind Ciara's regular defrosting. And because we also power all of Ireland's streetlights, we're the power behind keeping her safe when she cycles back home. And don't worry, Ciara, we power the radiators there too. Energia, the power behind your power.
Hello, I'm your car, from the future. You will be driving me a few years from now. Well, actually, you won't. I will be doing the driving for you, and I am an excellent driver. I will also park myself for you, and on my slow setting, I will walk your dog too. But there are limits to what I can do for you. So if you want to be properly future ready, you'll want a pension, powered by Zurich's award-winning investment performance. You talk to a financial broker or visit zurich.ie. I will present myself for my NCT.
Investment Excellence Brokers Ireland 2018. Zurich Life Assurance PLC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Zurich, the power behind your pension.
Jack Devlin. Repeat, Jack Devlin is in the vicinity. We have a number of casualties. Suspect is armed and dangerous. All units, please respond. Suspect is believed to be heading in the direction of Prairie Field Colony. I need backup. Repeat, I need backup.
Jack wants his daughter back.
It's my daughter. Where is she?
10 Star Series 2. A Sky original production starring Tim Roth.
Give her back or we'll kill ya.
Coming soon on Sky Atlantic.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now, welcome back. So we have Bernard Jackman here. We have Brendan O'Brien from the Irish Examiner as well. We've touched on the rugby. We've touched on pieces on Niall Quinn. There's plenty of golf, actually. Well, there's one McIlroy piece that you both really like by Dennis Walsh, and then there are various pieces on Padraig Harrington and his Ryder Cup captaincy. Might be quicker and easier to deal with the McIlroy piece firstly then. That's on page 11 of the Sunday Times. A lot of Sunday Times stuff today, actually.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff in the Sunday Times today, yeah.
So Dennis Walsh, clinical final round performances have deserted the former world number one. There was a time when Murray McIlroy was doing brilliant things in final rounds. His first win on the PGA Tour at Quail Hollow, he shot a course record 62 to come from behind, and he's gone out as well over the years in final rounds, in closing rounds, or in closing part in pairings, like the British Open jumps to mind when he won in 2014 and he sealed the deal. But there is a sense over the last 18 months that final pairings have not worked out so well for McIlroy. So what's prompted this is he was in the final round, in the final pairing in the final round with Gary Woodland at the Tournament of Champions in Hawaii, McIlroy's first event of the year, and he went out, and if you watched it, he never even threatened. Ultimately that tournament was won by Xander Schauffele, who shot a 62, which was a brilliant round, but McIlroy shot a 72, which was basically the joint second worst round of the day, and there was no wind. It was not a difficult course.
He started well. He's 1 under through 3 or 4,
and it just he just couldn't hold a putt. He was still hitting the ball reasonably well, but no charge came. In isolation, you would say that can happen, but it's part of a slightly wider trend now, and Dennis Walsh has been digging into that trend.
This is a small piece at the top of page 11 in size, but I just think it's such a brilliantly written and researched piece. And for me, it kind of sums up everything that I would ask about Rory McIlroy as a casual golf watcher. What's going on with him? And he starts off with the interview he gave after round 3 last weekend, which I saw at the time, and I was kind of thinking the same thoughts on it. Rory was talking about how when he was in Sunday groupings before, he was chasing too much and he was too gung-ho. So he was talking about how much he'd learned, and I'm going to just be patient and do my own thing. And then, like you say, Joe, he goes out and he shoots that, and you're going, what is this about? This is a guy who was so electric on a Sunday for so long. I mean, he won his majors, he was doing everything. And there's a lot of stats in it that Dennis has really digged into really well. But the one I think that stood out for all of us is McIlroy's cumulative score for those 9 rounds in Sundays where he's
final pairings.
Only one of those rounds was sub 70, and he says, with those numbers, what chance do you have? I mean, that to me really, really does sum it up. And he goes into a couple of instances where he was in touch, and even with Molinari in one of the tournaments, and this was before Molinari became the Molinari, the Open winner, and a guy who himself had a reputation for cracking down the stretch, and Molinari beat him. And the key for me in this article is the last 2 columns where he talks about, at this stage you wonder how much of the difficulty is in McIlroy's mind, and he talks about how he's always been wary about sports psychology. He worked with Bob Rotella for a very small period of time, and it just struck me that, McIlroy has always, from the outside in, seemed to take things on by himself. You know, he ended his relationship with Chubby Chandler, with Conor Ridge. He's got rid of his caddy, and he's always given me the impression of a guy who was just too within himself, too singular, not open enough to other ideas. And this just fits in perfectly with it. It's a beautifully written piece. There's not a wasted word in it.
Yeah, it's tight. Really tight, yeah. Because I had heard people make the point during the week that, in fairness to McIlroy, in a lot of those pairings, he was 2 or 3 shots behind, and he was generally against players in the top 20, 25 in the world. So it's, you know, it's not easy, and we're talking about the elite of the elite. But the stat which I must say struck me was that of those 9 rounds, only one of those rounds was sub 70. Yeah. So that is actually a problem with McIlroy.
It's astounding, isn't it?
I think, listen, with nearly all sports, and someone who's not probably, you know, winning, you look at as a technical, tactical, physical, or mental, and you'd have to say, you know, he's one of the best natural strikers of the ball. So it's not technical. Tactically, you'd imagine he has the experience now to be making good choice selection. Physically, he's probably one of the fittest in it. So the last box to tick is the mental, and the fact that he has been quite shy about tapping into help in that area might be just the push he needs to get back winning again. You know, but listen, by all accounts, golf is one of the hardest games in terms of self-belief, mental strength, confidence, and it's probably shocking that he hasn't, you know, added that extra layer. Even if it's a case of just ticking that box and making sure you're leaving no stone unturned.
Because Dennis says he met once with a sports psychologist, and he met with Bob Rotella as well. But insofar as we know, that's about the height of it.
Yeah. You know, John Duggan was talking earlier in the week about was it Harrington? He was saying was Ireland's best ever sportsman because he made the most of himself. Now, that's not an opinion I agree with, but I see where John's coming from. And if you look at Rory McIlroy, it's nearly the opposite at this stage. He's clearly not getting the best of himself. And in being open or not being open to other influences, I mean, there's elsewhere, even the bottom of the same page in the Sunday Times, about Andy Murray, who, in my opinion, again, is wrongly being described as the greatest British sportsman of all time. But that's a guy who's been open to new ideas, so much so that he got Amelie Mauresmo to be his coach. And people are saying a female coach for a men's player. So that's a guy who was breaking out of the box and looking at different ways of doing things and doing things that others didn't think. And McIlroy just strikes me as a guy who's the opposite way, that maybe he's not open enough. Maybe he's too used to doing all these things himself and taking too much on board. And we've seen now he's ditched Europe, basically. You know, his Irish Open commitments are gone. So you can see that he's getting rid of everything in the exterior, and he's concentrating, what do I have to do to win more majors? And maybe he just doesn't have enough people around him to step out and say, well, here's just an idea.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Well, it seems even so look, the elephant in his room, the elephant in the room as well, is his putting.
Yeah.
And the word, fairly reliable word, was that, you know, he hooked up with Brad Faxon last year, who was an excellent PGA Tour putter, one of the best ever, you know. And they met each other at the local golf club where they both lived. They happened to run into each other, and they got talking, and Faxon gave him some tips, and it really helped him for a couple of weeks. But even then, the suggestion seemed to be that it was casually suggested, Rory, why don't we head to the golf club around this time today and play around? And maybe it wasn't a total coincidence that Brad Faxon happened to be waiting, that almost bringing those two together had to be done, or even that had to be done with an air of coincidence, as opposed to, look, I hate to tell you, but you're about 200 in the world and you're putting, and you need to go and see someone. So he is in charge of his own ship. He's left 2 different agents. He's left his caddy behind. Really, his coach, Michael Bannon, is the only one who's survived this far. And even towards the end of last year, we saw Rory taking advice from another coach. So you do wonder who he listens to. That would be a very interesting thing for us all to really know. Who gives you advice that stops you in your tracks and makes you think, okay, I'm going to change things here. The putting is a problem. It's a massive problem. And on Sunday, he couldn't hold a putt. He didn't hold a single putt outside 15 feet all week. You think about that.
Wow.
The longest putt he held on that Sunday just gone was from 4 feet. So look, that is an issue. We would be disappointed if we hit those stats. That is an issue. However, he is at the moment managing to play well enough, even with the putting on the Thursday, Friday and Saturday, to put himself in final pairings. So it's not just the putting.
And he's won majors with his putting before, so you know.
There probably is something else. So I don't know, it's endlessly complicated.
It must be very hard though for if you've been a child prodigy and everything's been easy for you to a certain extent, then to put your hand up and say, oh, I need help, and then to understand how to take that on board, how it integrates with your natural game and your natural instinct. But it looks like, he does potentially now, his career hasn't kicked on to the level that we all probably expected or hoped. So he potentially does need to look at different people who can help him.
Well, in 2014, he won the British Open, won a WGC, and won the PGA. So 2 majors and a WGC in the space of about 4 or 5 weeks. 2014, 5 years ago, he was 24 years old with 4 majors, and had just won those 2 on the bench at 24. So if you, in your 2014 Christmas review, had said, you know what, I think we're going to be sitting here in half a decade, and he wanted to win another major, you would have been laughed out of the room. He was set to be the Tiger Woods.
Listen, there's some theory that the vast majority, 99.9% of human beings that have this creative explosion that only lasts a certain amount of time, you know, whether it's music or any sort of arts and sports. Are we looking at McIlroy just in that vein? You know, like you said, it would have been ridiculous to even suggest that, but I mean, time is ticking on.
It is ticking on, and Harrington, long ago, was saying around that time that it was Rory's time to make hay, because the next generation of college kids in the US would be able to hit the ball as far as, which was his great strength. Yeah. And now we are seeing. Now look, he's still, and the signs were very good at the weekend. He's still maybe the best driver in the world on his day, but there is just that advantage he had is not as fast, and on the greens they're all way ahead of him. So you would actually, as ludicrous as it is to say about McIlroy, or it sounds to say about a 29-year-old, his gap based on the strength of his game is dwindled. His window to win is actually in decline. We are going to continue the paper review here on Facebook Live, and we'll podcast the full thing just because we run out of time a little bit. So we're going to continue the paper review here on Facebook Live. You can podcast the full paper review with Bernard Jackman and Brendan O'Brien, but we're going to take a short break here on News Talk, and after the break you'll be in the fine company of Kevin Kilban and Stephen Doyle, who are at Goodison for the visit of Bournemouth against Everton. So that is on the way after the ad break. We're going to continue the paper round here, the paper review here on Facebook Live after this short break. So, our News Talk listeners are gone. We're still here on Facebook Live. This is the beauty of modern technology. We're continuing on here, So, that's the McIlroy thing. The one thing is, I suspect he is working very hard. He's doing all, he's clearly in the gym a lot and he's practicing. I'd say he's scratching his head a little bit. Yeah. And if ever there was if you could say to me, you can drive the ball like McIlroy and putt like McIlroy, or you can drive the ball like someone so-so and putt like Jordan Spieth at his best, you pick Spieth at his best, because it must be infuriating to think that you can hit the ball 340 yards like nobody else, and then from 10 feet, the stupid ball will not go in the stupid hole. You know what I mean? Like, none of us can even dream of hitting a ball 300 yards, but from 10 feet we might roll the odd one in. Yeah. That must be the infuriating thing for this guy. On to Harrington then. Anything catch your eye? But there was Dermot Leese, there was Paul McGinley, who would know him well, Philip Quinn's covered him a long time, Tommy Conlon, various people talking about Harrington.
Yeah, well, I actually, when I went to buy the papers, I was looking forward to reading McGinley's take on Harrington. I knew he'd be in it, obviously. I knew that they were, in similar circles growing up in South Dublin, but I didn't know how close they were. I didn't know that whole side of it.
Coláiste Éine has produced 2 Ryder Cup captains.
I knew even of the school link, but I didn't know that, they knew each other as intimately as they did, and I'd forgotten as well that they were teammates when they won the World Cup in '97 that time. I'd totally forgotten about it. It's amazing when things just completely leave your head.
God, you're getting old.
I am, yeah. I used to remember this stuff, and now even the old stuff I remembered is gone, But, McGinley is, people talk about Harrington as being a fascinating character. McGinley, to me, is equally so. He always has been, and since, the whole Ryder Cup captaincy and just the reputation he has now outside of golf. And he even mentioned here, is it the London School of Economics he's involved in something
That's right,
like that?
He's involved in their leadership.
This is a guy who's branched out.
Casually drops that in.
Yeah,
it's good for the brand, let's be honest.
Does not surprise me in the slightest. I mean, he's guru has some negative connotations among people, but that's nearly how I describe him. He's just been so successful in what he did, and he knows Harrington so well. He knows the Ryder Cup so well. Before the last Ryder Cup in Le Golf National, I remember reading his piece in the Sunday Times, and he went in to detail why he thought Europe would win it. Right. All about how the course suited him, how the European team was really brilliant piece, wasn't it?
It was prescient, to say the least. Yeah.
I mean, he was bang on in everything he said. So this guy, he knows his onions, and his stuff on Harrington is really good, and he talks about Bernard, you'd like all that as well, about how a doer isn't always a good shower, and what it is that Harrington does.
Yeah, you give the example of the two best golfers, Jack Nicholson and Nick Faldo, were losing captains. Yeah. So, but I think Pádraig has got a good balance. He's won 29 tournaments, 3 majors. So you can't say he was just a grafter. He's been elite, but also he's had some really tough times. Yeah. He's been able to. I think everyone in that team, whoever's in it, will be able to recognise the struggles he's had in his career and the disappointments, but also how good he was in a team environment. So he has that experience, and he speaks about being vice captain 2014, invaluable contributor, but also he gave him a task of keeping an eye on one player, Victor Dubuisson, and how he did that so well. And the challenge for Pádraig would obviously to be up in his helicopter and I suppose empowering his vice captains and being able to see the overall plan. I think that's what anything I've read about McGinley's captaincy was how organised he was, how clear he was in the vision, identity, but also the roles and responsibility each person had. And you'd imagine that it's hard to see Pádraig not doing a good job based on lack of preparation. I think he'll dot every I and cross every T in terms of preparation for it, but it seems like he's the ideal man for the job, and the third Irishman in the last 4 to be captain of Ryder Cup.
It's like there's loads of great colour. He talks about remembering knowing his brothers first, and Pádraig Harrington was always young Harry-O growing up, which is great. And he talked about when they played together as a partnership how they never ever talked about golf on the golf course because they went about the games so differently. We never read each other's putts. We never talked during the round. Simplicity was key. We talked about everything except golf. I think McGinley should be applauded here because if you read between the lines, and not even that much between the lines, this isn't all sugary and sweetness, and Pádraig Harrington is perfect in every way. Yeah. Like he does say, traits required to achieve do not always match traits necessary to lead. There is an argument that if you did not struggle, you are less likely to understand why others struggle. Now, I think he says Pádraig will have that box ticked because he did struggle to win initially. He says he loves an argument, he would have been a great lawyer, that is a strength. It sustained the focus application necessary to implement swing changes. But he says, but to lead and inspire 12 players with different personalities, flexibility and subtlety will be needed. And in that regard, his choice of vice captains will be important. Yeah. So he is very politely saying that could be a potential weakness of Harrington's. Yeah. And Harrington talked this week about he's not a fuzzy, give him a hug kind of character. No. He's an old schoolmaster type.
Like was mentioned there, I mean, McGinley mentions the quite dogmatic views that he has. Yeah. And we've all either sat down with Harrington or heard him speaking at length, and that's what it is. And the man is an obsessive, and he's talked for years about how he obsesses about his game. And how will that translate now that he's Ryder Cup captain? McGinley, I think in one of the other articles, maybe it's Philip Quinn's in the Mail on Sunday, talks about what advice he would give him, and he says just go and play your golf for 18 months. The last 6 months you can kind of really knuckle down and you can follow guys, but play your golf, be your own guy. Can you imagine Pádraig Harrington maybe for 18 months parking the Ryder Cup?
Well, do you know what? He was on here during the week, and I did say to him, because he's the away captain, so he'll have no say in the course, which I think takes up a lot of time. And I said to him, so will there be lots of months where you're not doing very much? And he said, to be honest, yeah. Okay. Which I thought was good.
That's good to hear.
As opposed to, I'll be reading the stats non-stop, because Tommy Conlon, it's a lovely way of going about it. In 1955, a British historian and author named Cyril Northcote Parkinson wrote an essay for The Economist that expounded on inefficiencies in government bureaucracies. In a phrase that became known as Parkinson's Law, he wrote that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. In other words, give someone a day to do a job, it'll be done in a day. Give them a week for the same job, they'll take a week. Give them a month, and so forth and so on. And he talks about what he calls the absurd amount of time Harrington has, 20 months to prepare for 3 days of golf.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a massive golf fan, but I think it's going to be fascinating just watching Pádraig. Yeah. And how it evolves and how he leads, and he's so honest and transparent as well, maybe to a fault sometimes. Yeah. But I think it's added an extra dimension to the Ryder Cup.
It's true. I'd say you in particular will be able to relate to scoreboard journalism and outcome-based analysis, and everything you did was right if you win, and everything you did was wrong if you lose. Never is that more cruel than in the Ryder Cup, where frankly the captain can do the greatest job of all time, like Davis Love in 2012, where they were leading by 4 points, and then frankly there is just this thing where in the singles you don't know what order they're coming out in. You don't know, so it's completely blind. You fling out 12 lads and that decides the whole thing, and if that doesn't go well for you,
you're doomed.
Terrible captain.
Terrible captain. Right, Curtis has a line on that. page 79 of the Sunday World, and he's talking about many of us find the endless analytics, the blue goldfish, the suggestion that deciding Rory's place on the timesheet requires Einstein-like intellectual muscle to turn off, which does sum it up.
Yeah.
You know, it does go overboard, and I think, you know, there is an acceptance of that fact by some of the people involved in some of the papers.
Yeah.
But like you say, Bernard, the fact that we've an Irishman again, and that Irishman,
it gives a great interest.
It does.
Like,
it does.
When McGinley was doing it, we were all honed in watching it, so it's going to be great.
If you don't like the Ryder Cup, you're pretty much screwed for.
You are, for the next while. Dermot Leese, as you can imagine, knows Harrington extremely well, and there's just one great anecdote. It's a fine piece about Harrington generally, but towards the end, he says, "I remember being in Harrington's house for a photo shoot." So he was obviously there to do an interview when the photographer seemed excessively busy. Real Dermot Leese quote. He said, "Noting my impatience, our host, Harrington, he called me aside and said gently about the photographer, 'He's only trying to do the best job he can.' Suitably chastened, I was immediately aware of how we scribes had benefited from the players' indulgence in such matters." It's a nice touch of class.
Yeah. He recognises an obsessive when he sees one.
Yeah, I'd say he respected it in a big way, How highly do we rate Andy Murray then as a sports person, Bernard?
Listen, I think he's done a huge amount in terms of for British tennis. I like anytime I see him interviewed, I like his story. I like all the setbacks he had and the perseverance and the diligence he's brought to his career in the game. You know, his press conference the other day was emotional. You know, and
brutal, really. Yeah,
brutal,
awful. Yeah.
brutal. But I don't think he controlled it. I think that's his passion, and he's so driven. So I probably admire more than maybe the raw results and titles probably deserve. But I don't know how you can rank him with other people. But I think he's a likeable guy, and I'd love to see him have a fitting send-off.
Yeah. I was listening to, I don't even know who, I think it was a British radio station on the way in, and they had spoken with the surgeon who was saying that he thinks it'll be very unlikely he can make Wimbledon.
Yeah.
So he may not get the farewell. He may have to walk out in his glad rags and wave, which would be not the best ending.
I don't think that'd be Andy Murray either, and
he wouldn't do that, would he?
He signed up one of the pieces. He signed into tournaments, or signed up for tournaments through into February. Right. So that's where it goes at the moment. But he's spoken in one of the pieces in the Mail on Sunday today. Mike Dixon, who was in Melbourne, and Murray's quote is saying, "I just can't imagine doing anything else." Like, he's taken on some outside interests to prepare him for retirement, and yet he's kind of going, "I just can't face them. The closer I get to them, I just don't. It's tennis for me, you know." Yeah.
But I don't think there's any elite athlete who plays without pain, right? You know, but to imagine having the thought of having a hip issue in tennis. I mean, there's no sport that probably exposes that like it for the duration. You know, the intensity, the
firmness of the surface,
and then the training you need. So it's not just. I mean, Paul McGrath, for example, you know, didn't train all week and just jogged a couple laps around the field with Aston Villa to be okay on a Saturday for 90 minutes. But you know, there's no chance in tennis that you can protect yourself.
Martina Navratilova was saying in the Sunday Times that she noticed he was favouring his left side even when standing.
A year and a half ago, even.
So I mean,
she said it's been such a downer, actually. You know, because Australia Open is on. It's when the whole thing kicks off, and it's cast a shadow over the whole thing. He seems to be very popular. Like, Murray's character is very interesting. I took a little while to understand.
Yeah, me too.
His authenticity, I think, as a person. You know, there were times where I thought, "Oh, give us a bit more," but actually, he just had a certain set of values. I think that he stuck rigidly to. He never was a show pony. He never said what you wanted him to say, because there's a piece in the Observer by Kevin McKenna, and he talks about how, look, in Scotland he was an absolute, you know, icon from minute one. He says, "I feel that England has grown to love him too, following a period when it didn't quite know how to react to him. They'd been accustomed to Tim Henman, John Lloyd, Sue Barker, speaking eloquently and dispassionately. The intense young Scot was something else. He didn't seem to have read or understood the protocol of British sporting defeat. He didn't appreciate being asked stupid questions either," which was always very true. He was a good man to correct you as well. If you said, "Well, so and so, you know, you'll break this record," and he'll be like, he would say, "Well, Serena Williams has broken that record." He'd put a few people on their backs as well.
As a journalist, you'd admire that as well. I remember Ronan O'Gara was very good. You never approached an interview with Raj. Every question was.
Speaking of Corkness,
every question. I remember when he was playing with Ireland and when they were in camp, and I remember every journalist would ask a question of Raj would be right. You could see that it was pared away. It was lovingly crafted, and examined from all angles. Does this stand up, or is he going to come back at me? And somebody like Murray, when they do that, that's great. Like, you know, you want somebody who's really
intelligent, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know.
Yeah. So
greatest British sports person though.
Well, what are the criteria? Because what did he won 2 majors, did he? Or 3?
3 Grand Slams.
He won Wimbledon in 2013.
Yeah.
And he won the US Open for sure.
He
Did
won
he win
two
US
Olympic titles as well.
And Olympic titles.
Yeah. So it's not a bad
no, it's amazing.
return, but
who are the contenders?
Ooh.
See, you come to this blind and then you're going to forget someone. There's a few Olympians in there. Like, does a footballer get in there? There's like a Bobby Charlton. I saw Bobby Charlton being mentioned as England's, I guess, what if we're talking Andy Murray, we have to extend it to Great Britain. But I saw Bobby Charlton being mentioned. I don't know. I never care about these lists really. What are they? How can you compare Andy Murray in the 21st century with Bobby Charlton in the 60s?
Yeah.
In different sports, you know. Yeah.
In fairness to Murray, he's up against, you know, in his career, he's up against Djokovic.
Nadal. Very tough time.
Tough time.
I mean, if Murray was coming through in the next wave,
you'd say
might stand a chance of getting 5 or 6 or 7. Yeah. No, it must have been unbelievably difficult. He had to improve massively to get there, didn't he? It was a bit of a mountain for him.
And even Navratilova spoke about it as well. You can't underestimate the pressure he was on at Wimbledon. I mean, he, like you mentioned, the darling of British tennis, and they'd had the Henman era, and suddenly we have a contender that just never gets there in Henman Hill, and then Murray's Mound and everything. I mean, it was vomit-inducing a lot of the time to look on, and you couldn't but admire that he actually went and he did it with all that expectation. Like you say, Bernard, the quality of men's tennis at that time.
Greatest era of all time. So, and he didn't belong there initially.
No.
Like he
was a grafter.
He chiseled his way in through sweat. Which was remarkable. I guess you can achieve greatness by winning something once or twice, and it's just as great as the guy who can win something 15 times, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have a Willie Mullins story open there in the
just
Sunday
obviously
Times.
It was just around his sense of ambition and you know, self-belief and being a little bit creative. You know, obviously it was high profile in 2016. He refused to lower his training fees to Gigginstown, and like Gigginstown and JP McManus and having you know, horses from them makes your job and the chance of success much more likely. But in fairness, the interview with his son, but he's talking about how he lost 60 horses kind of overnight, and rather than actually downscaling and accepting that, he went out and found new owners, built new barns, and in the following year when he beat Gordon Elliott, who obviously was a phenomenal trainer as well, 8-7 in the race to be leading trainer at a Cheltenham Festival. 6 of Elliott's winners were from Gigginstown, you know, horses that Willie would have had, and the 7 of Willie Mullins owners are winners that come from different owners. So it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal the size and scale of the big yards now in Irish racing. It says, you know, Willie Mullins has got 250 horses, Gordon Elliott's got 250 horses, Joseph O'Brien has got 250 horses, and it makes it very difficult for the small trainer. So I'm conscious of that, but I do think that Willie Mullins is it comes from a phenomenal family, but incredibly successful and probably more competitive internally than maybe it comes across.
The exterior is very
steely and wants to win.
Patrick makes the point that when is it Gigginstown or Gigginstown? Have we settled this?
I'm not sure.
Gigginstown. I know Michael O'Leary took exception to the question from a British journalist that wanted Cheltenhams, and I saw it in print, so I didn't understand it. Well, is it Gigginstown or Giggins? It's spelled Gigginstown.
Yeah, but, it is. Okay, when he lost Michael O'Leary's horses, there's a quote there from Patrick to the effect that, at the age he was, the scale of the blow, they fully anticipated him saying, "Do you know what, that's my time. That's a nice time to bow out," and he did the opposite. I guess the hook for the piece is that, unlike the previous 2 years in the champion trainer race, where Elliott's tactic was to load up the front half of the year and have a massive lead, which Willie Mullins would have to try and strangle back at Punchestown right at the death, it seems Mullins has looked at what Elliott has done and decided to try and get off to an early lead. It's a bit like Jose Mourinho and Alex Ferguson and you know, how league campaigns changed. So it seems now Mullins is at over 3 million quid and he's running away with the champion trainer title.
It's an amazing, it shouldn't be surprising, but it is amazing that something like that would matter so much.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I don't think people really appreciate that about the horse racing world, that this is clearly a point of pride and principle, that the changes that you both talked about that he made, the bigger barn, and we're getting the racers out, the horses out earlier. I don't know why that surprises me, that it's because I've been to Cheltenham and I've done some horse racing, but it surprised me. It's like, wow. And like even Patrick spoke about there, that he was at an age he didn't need to do it.
No.
And yet this was like, it was like a declaration of war that Gordon Elliott had made, and it was accepted and it was responded to in flabbergasting style.
He's emphatic now. What Mullins is at 3 million, over 3 million.
Yeah, he's 600,000 ahead.
Okay.
But it's, and
with punches tend to come, where he generally comes out on top as well.
Yeah, he finishes the season historically strong, but as you said, he's watched what Elliott has done, and he's attacked from the start. So he's a 27% strike rate, but an unbelievable family dynasty. But Willie's taken it to another level.
Just to finish off, then there was a back page piece in the Sunday Times, which, geez, it kicks off with a bang.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the opening 200 words. There's the 2-page spread in those alone. We don't quite get it, unfortunately. But Rosemary Smith is chatting about her new book.
Rosemary Smith is the obviously female rally driver from the 60s and 70s who broke lots of new ground and had to put up with a lot of sexism and misogyny, and even from members of her own family. Her mother looked down her nose at what she was doing. Her husband apparently was not happy with it. We've seen Rosemary Smith pieces in the papers over recent weeks. We obviously had the Season of Book Awards and everything else. So I think a lot of us would have kind of seen and heard bits and pieces about her. But like you say, Joe, I mean, the start of it is, the subheading is "The Me Too movement has gone too far," says former rally driver. So I think we're all sitting down expecting this is going to be a meaty look into the gender politics of the age from a woman who's in her 80s now, and in fairness has a unique view of what it is to be a woman in a man's world. And disappointingly, I think it's only mentioned in the first 2 paragraphs. So there's no, I mean, the quote is, she is talking about the women's view, the women's movement, and Me Too in particular, and she says it's going over the top. So she says it's getting to the stage where a man can't even put his hand on your elbow to help you through the door. That's just being a gentleman, and I like being treated as a woman. Women have gone over the top, and men can't be men. They're afraid to be men. Women are putting them up now to be knocked down. It has gone too far the other way. So that's just literally peeling off the lid on a can of worms and flinging them around the room, and yet it's not developed by Paul in the article for whatever reason.
I'd say time. I'd say
space is clearly the issue.
Was the issue. Yeah, but like the fact that Paul led with it.
Exactly.
He knew.
He knew.
Really
Yeah. And it's just a pity that it wasn't developed a little bit more. You'd like to get that. I mean, obviously, this is a hugely emotive issue and a hugely topical issue, and who are we as 3 men in the studio to
yes, do 3 men here want to weigh in and agree wholeheartedly, or to steer clear? I think it's
enough to say that for a lot of people it's a very black and white issue, and it's black and white issue on both sides of the argument. So you have people who are saying, like Rosemary Smith, this has gone too far, and you have other people who say it's certainly not gone far enough. And how can anybody say it's gone so far when we've had millennia of women being told to keep in their place? So it would have been just a very interesting look at it from a woman who had gone through all this, who did things that were never expected, or that was believed was inappropriate for a person of her gender to do it. So
I'm going to buy the book. I haven't just read this little article. I haven't read it, but
what a story.
She's in her 80s. She reckons she's the oldest person ever to drive a Formula 1 car, as she did for 15 laps last year with Alain Prost. It's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah. Unbelievable life story. There was a great on that whole area that she's talking about, though, and I don't think 3 men sitting around here talking about it is probably the right way to go. But there was a great piece a couple of weeks back around Christmas in the Irish Times. Una Mullally wrote it, and sorry, your name escapes me here. Rosemary Smith is talking about men are afraid to open a door for a woman and that kind of stuff, and you'll see these stories now in media, and it's real clickbait stuff, man fired for opening door, this kind of stuff. And actually, one, it's so cheap, because there are 2, everyone's going to have a side there, and men are going to say, well, this is bloody outrageous and this is crazy. And her argument was that this stuff, it's real clickbaity, it's distilling the issue down into nonsense, and it also allows people who don't want change to happen to go, do you know what then? If that's what this is about, I want nothing to do with any of it. And so you're taking the nonsense stuff, which actually isn't representative of the real world. Like if any of us open a door for a woman, there's no issue, I would say.
Yeah.
But you're able, if you want to block it all out, you're able to take that and throw it in with, say, a more serious issue, which is very real. And actually, we need to smarten up as an audience, and the media needs to play a role as well, and stop kind of throwing all this kind of nonsense
which won't
day
happen,
after day.
as you know. I mean, it is clickbaity, and the clickbaity culture is still in, so that's not going to...
Probably not.
You know, what you need is people to use their heads and to be able to separate that. But again, it's an emotive issue, and people don't have time. They see that article and they go, well, that's enough for me, I don't want anything to do.
Well, her argument was that the dumbed-down gender war is clickbait gold.
Yeah.
Because you're either a man or a woman.
Sure.
Everyone's interested.
Yeah.
And it was just a really thoughtful, it was a brilliantly written piece. And I must say, because I was getting a bit sick of the, you know, can you open a door, not open a door? And then you realise, God, this really isn't, this is not what this is about. Yeah. It was a really good piece. I'm sure it's on the Irish Times website. And I promise you it's explained 10 million times more eloquently than I've done without much pre-thought. It's which has come right at the end of the paper review. So I think that is pretty much just done, unless there's anything else you want to direct someone towards.
Just on that, there was a sponsored piece in Sunday Independent Life magazine on female athletes. It's essentially a sports photo shoot, but it goes into a lot of what we're talking about in the sports sense, about the need for women to be more visible. The 2020 campaign that is looking to increase the presence of female athletes in the media by 20% over a certain period of time. So that's just on the back of the Rosemary Smith stuff. It's not often we talk about stuff that's in the Life magazine and the newspaper reviews. And just one other one that caught my eye was the piece with the Wolves owner in the Sunday Times, which I think is well worth anybody's
very
attention.
ambitious. They're looking to win a league.
But in a very interesting way. They're not going to chuck money at it. So.
The Spurs way, they highlighted it.
Yeah.
That's in the Sunday Times as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Lads, pleasure. Thanks so much for being here. Bernard Jackman.
Thank you.
Keep busy. Pop in and chat to us about where it's all going in the next couple of months. And Brendan O'Brien from the Irish Examiner, thanks a million. That is us done for the paper review. You can podcast the full thing, and we'll be back next week.